in our first season, we had something called Antonio Harvey time. And there were a couple games, one against the Bulls, one against the Wolves, I believe both in the third quarter, where you would spike a ball, go on the fast break, throw down a dunk, and then spike another ball, and it was like an explosion of energy. Do you remember those moments, and what was that like in front of those Vancouver fans?
If I'm being honest, I don't generally remember those moments, but when people remind me of them, they come back, and I think it feels good. I mean, how else could it feel? It's the idea of being a part of something that's special. I think back to that first game versus the Timberwolves, and we were down. I was blessed enough to come into the game. We make a turnaround, and when I look back, and for this particular documentary, I actually did go back and look at some of that tape, and as I'm watching it, I could feel the emotion come back. Right, the idea of being a part of a turnaround, being a part of something that's going to be significant and special in the history of a franchise. That first game, there's only one of them, and I was really fortunate to be a part of that and to be a part of the victory, and then on top of that, to be a big part of why we got the victory. It was tremendous.
Now, I can't remember specifically if you were on the floor for the Chris King tip. What do you remember about that moment?
I wasn't on the floor. I had spent most of the third and fourth quarter on the court. I think I was dog tired by the end of the game, and coach subbed me out. But I do remember the tip in and just the emotion, not just from the players, but from the fans. I mean, it was like we had won a championship, and for all intents and purposes, for the Vancouver Grizzlies fans at the time, it was a championship. It was our first game. It was the first time they had ever seen an NBA team on a basketball court. So they were as excited about that first game as we were, and then to on top of that be an expansion team and get the win, it was surreal.
So you, Kenny Gaddison, and Benoit Benjamin were all taken in the expansion draft. And unfortunately, all three of you off the squad by February of that season. What's your understanding of kind of why that was, why you were taken in that draft and then kind of jettisoned so quickly?
I think there were different reasons for each of us. Benoit was taken to be the starting center on that roster, but once they drafted Big Country, you had to make a choice, right? Do you, as an expansion franchise, do you decide to go with a veteran, or do you try to develop your young player that's going to be the future of the franchise? And I think the team went with the latter, and it was probably the right move. In my situation, it was different. Essentially, my ego got in the way. I was playing well. I was a big part of what we were doing, and I think about 20 games in, I got hurt. I had a hip injury. Got healthy, wanted to come back right away. Stu and the upper management decided to hold me back a little bit, and I got impatient. And I let my ego get the best of me and demanded to be cut so that I could go someplace else and play, and that's what I did. So I don't really, I don't look at that as anything that had to do with the franchise or to do with the city. It was a young kid finally getting his first chance of actually being on the court, and my ego got in the way. And as far as Kenny is concerned, I think it was just a matter of getting some young guys back in here, and for KG it was kind of the same thing. He was a veteran player, didn't really want to be on an expansion team, and I think from a player's perspective you kind of understand the reasoning behind it. It's unfortunate that, for me personally, I didn't get to be a part of the future or the long-term future of the franchise, but it all worked out for everybody, I guess.
Yeah, so there was a lot of kind of tense feelings in people being brought up to Vancouver. I mean, how much of the attitude in the locker room was, hey, we're here to build something, we want to be a part of something, and how much of it was kind of like, hey man, get me out of here?
I think it depended on who you asked. For me in particular, and I can't speak for and won't speak for anybody else, it was an opportunity. It was my third year in the league. My first year, my rookie year, I played a little bit. My second year, I actually played less. And so I was looking for that opportunity to get back on the court. I remember sitting at my brother's house in New Orleans watching the expansion draft and being super excited at the prospect of getting to a city where I can be on the court again. And then it was all about training. And so I came in the training camp that year in really good shape. I had worked all summer on my game, and I think it showed. It showed in those games where I was able to come in and be a spark and be a part of comebacks and things like that. So I think it just depends on your perspective. For me as a young guy, it was a chance to play. For some of the veteran players, I think they looked at it maybe as a slap in the face that now I'm on an expansion team and we're losing and all of the things that go along with it. But yeah, for me, it was just an opportunity.
And what were your impressions of the way in which the franchise was run by Stu Jackson and the rest of the brass?
Listen, I have no issues with the way the franchise was run or with Stu. I don't even know how to begin to talk about that, because it's so beyond what my job was as a basketball player. I mean, you're an expansion team. I think you only have like 3/4 of the salary cap that other teams have. You're limited in your ability to make early draft picks. So for me, it was they did the best with what they had. And you look at the picks. I mean, Sharif was a great pick. Bibby was a great pick. Country, to me, was a great pick. I was talking with somebody either earlier today or yesterday. We were talking about Country. If Country was in today's NBA, he'd be Nikola Jokic. He had all the skills that Jokic had and all the limitations. Wasn't a great athlete, but he had a super soft touch, could rebound pretty good, was a decent passer, but he had a good jump shot. But in that NBA, guys weren't allowed to be jump shooters at the 5 position. So I look at Big Country, he would have been a superstar in today's league. No reason to bang. It's all about the jump shot, the passing, and the limited rebounding. So, yeah, all great picks. I can't think of a single bad draft pick that the Vancouver Grizzlies had.
Back-to-back MVP Bryant Reeves, if we could only imagine such a thing. Oh, my God.
He was ahead of his time is the only way to describe it.
What was it like to play for Brian Winters? Like, that's a tough job. NBA legend comes in, and he's got to try and kind of put the pieces together on an expansion team.
I think the best we saw of Coach Winters was his first 3 games. The way he coached us and prepared us going into that season really spoke volumes for who he was as a coach, because nobody knew who we were, right? Unfortunately, once we started winning, his first 3 games, people actually started game planning for us. I look at, think about the Portland Trailblazers when we went into Portland and gave them an L on opening night of the Moda Center. They overlooked us. There's no doubt about it. They thought we had no chance of coming in there and getting the victory than we did. Then Minnesota happened, and all of a sudden, this is a better team than we thought. Maybe we need to look at the scouting report, because teams got embarrassed by an expansion franchise. So I think that what ended up happening was we became something that people thought about, and then the talent difference started to make a real, it's challenged the team in order for us to be able to get victories.
And so you had a real short stint here in Vancouver, and here you are, 27 years later, kind of taking this all in. What does it mean to you, or what do you think about the fact that there are still, there's a massive documentary crew, there's my podcast, there's going to be a couple hundred fans at the theater tomorrow.
1,800. Don't be shorting my girl Cat.
Thousands.
Don't be shorting my girl Cat, dog. Come on, man.
But like,
she's right over there. She will cut you if you say something like that again.
to know that this many people still care about this team, kind of a woebegone team, really, but we still love those Grizz. What does that say to you?
Says that the NBA might have made a mistake, if I'm being honest. I think that you look at it for what it truly is. When this team left and went to Memphis, it's not like they were selling out every night. They were getting no more fans in Memphis than they got here in Vancouver. And the fact that the fans are still excited about the team says everything. It proves that the NBA made a mistake, and hopefully at some point in the future they'll take the time, realize the mistake, and fix it by putting the team back up here.